Back in town on a red eye. Baby, don't make me wait. Body like, been a long while. And I just wanna taste. Let's be alone. I put it down when I come around.
Hi, you guys, and welcome back to Talkin Smack. I am super excited for this guest today. Kelsey, welcome on. So I want to jump right into it. So you went to business school, you did the corporate life, and then you left that to open your own salon and do your own thing and take a completely different direction. Tell us a little bit about like what your thought process was like, what, was lacking from corporate that made you want to move in a different direction and go after, pursue your own dreams.
Mackenzie, thanks for having me on. I was just in Pullman. I know you were there for 5 minutes, but I was just in Pullman speaking to College of Business students literally a week ago. And so I'm very much in my feels, like in my reflective state. So this timing is perfect. But to give the short story, I always knew I wanted to be my own boss. I just didn't know how to get there. And for me, beauty was the fastest way because I just naturally started doing it. I was in a sorority, and I was the girl who would do everyone's hair and makeup before we'd go out on the weekends. I was the girl who was a barista, and someone was like, "You're good at your makeup. Will you do mine for my wedding?" And organically, I just started doing more and more. So I'm literally in corporate downtown Seattle, and I'm doing fashion shows and photo shoots with like SMG and the model agencies on the side. Like I lived a double life, and I had a really cool corporate job, but we didn't have, when you work for a university, I was working for WSU, everything moves at a snail's pace. And it's like, I had all these dreams and ideas, and I just kept getting shut down and shut down and shut down. And I was like, well, this is frustrating and I'm already doing the hair thing. So what if I just go for it? So I just jumped all in, and I knew I'd always have my own business. I didn't know how long my journey would be in cosmetology. Naively, I think I thought I'd be in it for life. And as we've talked about before we even hit record, it's like so many things have happened between that moment and this moment. But that's the short of how I went from corporate to that. Long story short, that's that.
That is so cool. I actually had no idea that you did makeup on the side and then was doing hair before you even went to cosmetology school. I think that is so cool, like being able to do something that not only you're naturally good at, but you're excited about and it's fun for you to do. Because I was the same way in high school. My friends were like, "Can you just do my makeup?" Like, yeah. I don't know how to do it, or I don't know what to do. And it was fun for me and it was exciting. And so tell us a little bit about your journey. So you went to cosmetology school. Did you go out on your own right away, or did you work for a salon? And I know that you had a salon, and then you decided to step away from that as well and go full time in the coaching world. And I'd love to hear, what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, as you can tell, I've done a lot of random stuff in my in my life. Let's see. So before even going to hair school, I Googled like freelance makeup, like best hair salon in Seattle, and I interviewed all these business owners. And I'm like, how do I do what you do? Like, I'm about to go to a beauty school. How do I do that? And I remember one of them being like, "Why are you even talking to me? Like, why are you wasting my time?" She like shut me down. I know. Isn't that crazy? I'm like, I wonder if she remembers that conversation. But anyways, yeah, it was very interesting. But my whole thing was like, if I'm going to go, I want to be as efficient as possible. Like, I already have a business degree. I've already been out in the working world, and I just want to accelerate my career. So I want to do everything I possibly can. And to people listening, my confidence, I don't know if it was confidence, but my willingness to ask the questions and ask people who are further down the road for their advice. And you do it kindly. You don't just come at it like, "Tell me everything for free." Like, there's a way to go about it. But that is something that's been a constant in my career, and it's for sure helped me every single time. And so, yeah, I sought out mentors. I went to school. All of them told me, "Well, go to school." Like, you just have to do that. But like, get done as fast as possible and get a really good internship. And so I searched and found this amazing salon. They didn't even have one. They were hiring like a full stylist, and I had to like pitch myself to her, and she created this position for me. So I worked in a salon for a couple of years just to build my clientele and refine my skills. And I'm very glad I did that. Yeah, I think even with social media, things have kind of influenced. I don't know your perspective, Mackenzie, on industry, but I think learning from other people is you're just going to get there faster. And my mindset was like, I would rather make mistakes on someone else's dime than my own dime. And then I went off and built my own salon after that, which was 3 years mentoring other under people. And then I grew to teaching and coaching and stuff within that salon. And then 3 years of having my own salon.
That is so cool. And I completely agree with you. I think, and that's something that I had to learn the hard way, because in the beginning I was like, I can figure it out on my own. It's fine. And I think I had that mentality because when I first started in 2014, there weren't, I mean, Instagram was still so new. Social media was still, you know what, it came out in 2010, I think. Like, it still was baby. And in that way, I would reach out to other lash artists and I would just ask, like, hey, what adhesive are you using? Or hey, can I take, like, anyone around the area, I was like, can I take you to coffee and like ask you a couple questions about like what products you're using? Because of course in my mind, it's not me. I wasn't the problem. I wasn't why my retention wasn't working well in anything. It was the products I was using. And I got shut down left and right. And it was so secretive, and everyone, you know, it was like very gatekeepy. And it was really hard to get other people, you know, probably similar to your situation of the gal being like, you're wasting my time. Like, what are you doing here? And it has changed so much now. I feel like a lot more people are willing to actually like share their expertise and share what they've learned and what's worked well for them and what hasn't worked well for them. And but yeah, it's been wild. And I think that is so cool to be able to have a salon. And how many employees did you have? And when did you realize I don't want this salon?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so when I left, I even named it. I named it Gather & Co. because I saw it. Like, I saw a salon with a giant dining room table where people could kind of co-work and hang out. Like, I visualized it so vividly. And I wanted to have a wedding venue and a co-working. Like, I had massive dreams with this. And I started in a studio. And at that time, I was already kind of building my wedding clientele. And just by sheer need, I started to grow my team that way. So I only had the studio for just me and wedding trials, and then I had contract employees to take on more brides because I literally couldn't anymore. And one of them is our mutual friend, which is like crazy how small the world is. But yeah, my employees were just contractors for wedding season. My whole mindset behind that was like, we're going to grow there so then I can get another space and then grow my team in that way. I would say, so year 1, month 10, so not even a full year in business, I hit 6 figures. At that time, I also was working 4 days a week. I was a huge proponent, probably before it was even trendy, of like work-life balance and really having a CEO day to work on your business, not like just serving clients all the time. Boundaries. My clients didn't have my cell phone number. Like, I was huge on that as well. And I realized people, like, that wasn't normal to run your beauty business that way. And so I would just give advice to people and I'd be like, oh, well, this is what I've done. This is what's worked for me. And I'm like, anytime someone would ask, I'd be like, this is kind of fun. But I didn't know what to do with that or how to turn that into a thing. And so I slowly just gave more and more advice. And yeah, I picture it like a plateau. Like, I climbed the mountain. I was just at the top, and Gather & Co., the vision of that big salon, it just was like, I don't really want to do that. And I knew I wanted to do different, but I didn't know how to get out. And I mean, to be honest, I'm making great money. I have an awesome schedule. I have my clients were amazing. That was the hardest part for me, was letting them go. And I like was waiting for the world to tell me to figure out my shit. And then COVID happened. So that's how it worked for me, at least.
I feel like COVID thrust so many of us in different directions we never thought we would go, or we were like too afraid to take the leap. And then it was like, wait a minute, I get this moment to reset almost, because now, like, all of us, none of us could see clients, none of us could go into our shops for, I think up here in Washington, it was like the better part of 3 months. And it was like a hard reset. And I feel like for so many of us, and, you know, speaking for myself, it gave me that chance to step back and reflect and wonder, what do I really want? Because I didn't have work-life balance. I was working 5-6 days a week. I was working 10 to 12-hour days. And I was like, this is what it's supposed to be. This is how I'm supposed to work. And to hearing you say, like, to have a CEO day where you work on your business and not in your business, I think is so important. And for the listeners, do you have any advice on, like, if, you know, speaking to previous me, working 5-6 days a week, what would you say to me? And I know you do a lot of coaching now too, so obviously I don't want to give you, have you give all your good nuggets away because, people should hire you for that. But like, what would you tell that person that, for them to get to that point of like, oh, I feel like I have a work-life balance?
Yeah, you're a ticking time bomb, and it's just a matter of time until you go off. And I can tell you this from firsthand experience. So I was not always a balanced queen, if you will. For me, I literally fainted on the job. Like, it was back when I was working under the other employer. Yes, I know. For those listening, Mackenzie's eyes just got like so big. But yeah, it's so embarrassing. I am applying my client's color, and I can feel like clamminess washing over me, and the walls are like closing in, and I'm just getting through. And usually I'm very talkative, and this client, we had good chemistry, so her and I would talk all kinds of cool stuff all the time. And I was pretty quiet because I'm literally just like praying to get all this on her head. I go, okay, I'll be right back. Bead of sweat off my lip, and then I walk to the bathroom and pass out. And that day I had drank coffee for breakfast and lunch, and no one to blame but myself. Wasn't drinking water, just didn't take care of myself. My now fiance had to pick me up. Someone had to finish her service. Unrelated, but by the grace of God, she stayed a client of mine for years after. But that was my moment. That was my wake up call of like, okay, there's busy and then there's neglect. And I was neglecting myself for sure. For sure. And the examples around me, I mean, at the time, one of my mentors literally came back early. She had neck surgery and like came back, and I had to help finish her services because she came back. Another time she had pneumonia and she's doing hair with pneumonia. Another time I had two mentors. The other mentor had gout, and like I'm doing services or helping with his, and they just pushed through. And unfortunately, and this kind of leads to my pivot now, when your time is how you make your money, like, and you're a business owner, that's tough. Because like, if you're not showing up, if you're not actively providing the service, you're not making any money. And I saw those examples around me. I even had wrist surgery and I took out my own stitches because I wanted to get back early. Like, so many dumb things back then. So when I went off on my own, those were the examples I had. I had those personal experiences myself. I took the ownership that I put myself in those situations. And I'm like, I'm going to be different. I'm doing different, because the better I take care of me, the better I can take care of my clients. And if I can show that example to them, like, they're going to respect me more, and maybe they can apply that to their lives. And for me, I was very much of that mindset when I opened my salon. And that's also a huge pillar of what I teach in my coaching for that exact reason, because I was old you, Mackenzie.
Mm-hmm. I think so many of us, and I feel like it's gotten to a point where it's a badge of honor to be like, oh, I only had iced coffee today.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't eaten today and I've taken 10 clients. Yeah. Like, that is not okay. And I feel like I think there's a difference between hustle culture and hustling in your business and still being able to take a step back and take care of yourself. And like you said, like, you cannot neglect yourself, because you're going to end up passed out in the bathroom, or you're going to end up, and like, for me, my situation was, my back seized up on me and I fell and I couldn't get up off the ground. And it was when I was 20 and I was working out of my parents' kitchen, and I had to call my mom to come home from work so she could literally pick me up off the ground and take me to the chiropractor. And same thing. I was only having coffee. I hadn't eaten that day. It was probably like my 6th day in a row of working 10 clients a day. And that was a wake up call for me to realize, oh, well, I'm 20 years old, and if my back is giving out on me right now, what is it going to be like when I'm 60 years old? What is it going to be like when I'm 70 years old? Like, am I going to be able to walk? Yeah. And so many of us, I think, or, speaking for myself, we get in this people pleaser mentality, and we want to, like, we can't turn clients away and we can't do this. And I think for you, even hearing you say that your clients never had your personal cell phone number, what? Like, and that was a mistake that I made in the beginning, is not having 2 different phones, or having literally a landline at the shop that they can call and we can, call them back. Cause, I still have clients texting me here and there. I have, my employees' clients texting me. And that was one thing I was like, oh, I'm not going to have to deal with this when I open a salon. Well, now I'm dealing with it times 8. And that's something that, like, if you were speaking to someone starting their business today, what kind of boundaries would you recommend they put up from the very beginning so they don't have to end up backtracking and changing things?
Yeah, changing it sucks. It's really hard, and I'm sure you can relate to that. But people treat us how we train them to. And so the second you open that door and they're used to having that direct line of communication, it's near impossible to close. The analogy I love to use is like, do you have your dentist number? Do you have like your pediatrician, if you have kids, like do you have your pediatrician's cell phone number? Most likely no. But like that's not the expectation. Also, most of the time you go, they're running late all the time. And so, but we're used to that. We don't question it. I'm not saying in the salon you should run late. I think you need to be very self-aware and be respectful of people's times. But just to provide perspective that we have these assumptions in certain industries that we do business in. And as a business owner, I think if you remind yourself, especially hair, makeup, beauty, anything, the better you take care of you, the better you can take care of your people. That, I mean, it's such a physical job too. It's an emotional job. Like if emotional, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to do as well. If you're not investing in more education, if you're not investing in taking classes from Mackenzie and having her mentor you, then you're going to stagnate, and that's going to affect the long term of your business. So I would just prioritize taking care of you first. It's not selfish, but you have to carve out those boundaries, especially as a business owner. No one's going to do it for you. You have to do it for you. And on the flip side, just because you have those boundaries, just because you're growing your team and outsourcing also doesn't mean you can just be lazy and sitting on a beach, especially if you have a team of people and you're service-based like we are. At the end of the day, there's still things you have to do. The things you have to do just change as you continue to grow. And I think there's also this other flip side of culture where it's just like boundaries and self-care. And I'm like, yeah, laziness. Like that's also not healthy. So I think there's a fine balance of being productive and intentional with your time and also taking care of yourself. But the truth is there's seasons of sprint in running a business, point blank. You're just going to have seasons where you are sprinting, and that's just a matter of fact. And if you're not down with that, then maybe entrepreneurship isn't for you. Go work for an awesome company that allows you to grow within the confines of that business. So that's advice I give.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I feel like that's so huge. And I feel like, we were talking about this a little bit off camera. I'm assuming it's probably the same in the hair world, but the lash artists, I feel like so many people see other people do all the steps and they think I have this blueprint of all the things I have to do. Okay, I'm going to work for a salon, then I'm going to go out on my own, then I'm going to open my own salon, then I'm going to hire employees, then I'm going to start a product line and do all these other things. And I think it comes down to knowing yourself and knowing what kind of responsibility you want to take on, because the bigger you want to grow your business, whether you like it or not, even if you hire a team, there's more responsibility on your back. And I think for me, that was one thing that I very much was like, oh, I have to do all the things all these other people are doing because that's the next step. And I think it's important to reflect and really decide, like, is this something that I want? Is this extra, time and effort and energy going in a place that I want it to? Or do I want to raise my prices, cut my schedule down, and keep doing what I'm doing because this is what I love? And I think, again, like I've had to learn so many things the hard way, but I think for me, that's apparently my learning style of, taking that step back and realizing like, oh, because I went for a while where I didn't take any clients at all. And I completely passed all my clients off to the girls, and I was working on these other things. And, I've talked about this before, but I went through a divorce and I have 2 dogs at home. And so I was like, I can work from home. The more I worked from home, the more I was like, I hate working from home. I was like, I don't feel creative here. I don't feel excited. And, only up until recently, I started taking a couple clients back again and filling my schedule with just a handful of clients here and there. And actually being in the salon, I feel like has helped me feel more creative. And so I guess, this is leading me into a question for you. Your coaching business now, do you mainly work from home? And will you actually talk about the CEO Society as well? That I know, you've partnered up with Molly, which is so cool. Yeah. Because I think, community is so important for small business owners. Community is important for everyone, but especially to have that kind of, it's like a little mini mastermind almost. And I think it's so important to be able to have those connections with people.
For sure. And I'm going to bring it back to something you said in there, which is that clear blueprint of where to go. There's a million ways to get there, but you have to know why you're going in the first place. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't pause and reflect on. And specifically type A kind of hardworking people who are successful and it just keeps kind of happening to them. They never stop like I did and be like, where do I actually want to go and why? Like, why am I even doing this? And that's, for me, the COVID wake up for me was so important. I think I was waiting for the world to tell me what to do. And if I had just taken like a weekend in solitude, I probably would have figured it out. But I never gave myself that space because I was addicted to the hustle. I was addicted to the grind and the recognition and all that stuff. So just stop and pause and take the time to do that because I think that's really important. And as far as the coaching, oh my gosh, like if I zoom out and think about all the things I did, a lot of people don't know I used to have a podcast with a friend called Ignite Your Life. And that happened because we met at a networking event for wedding professionals. And we were like, this is kind of boring and stale. Like we could do our own thing. So we started our own podcast and we had these little groups that we'd get together. She was a photographer. So we'd do like headshots and happy hour. We had all these things we were doing. This was years ago. And that kind of failed because guess what? I didn't talk about it. Like I didn't promote it very well. I'd be like, oh, headshots and happy hour in a week. Who's coming? And that's not how social selling works, apparently. And in the hair world, I didn't have to, I mean, this sounds bad, but I didn't have to work that hard. I just showed up, I captured the type of hair I did and I enjoyed doing, and I would just share it and people would just come to me. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that, but I didn't get it. I didn't really get what it took to promote something and hype something up until having a coaching business and things failing miserably. So back to you learning the hard way. Oh, coaching humbled me. I also think social media had changed. Just in general, a lot had changed. And so when I started my coaching business, initially, this is not sexy, people, but COVID hits, we're shut down. PPP, EIDL, unemployment. I figured all that stuff out because I have a business degree and I understand that world. I understand what was needed. And I literally was just helping people with that. I would be like, oh, here's who you need to talk to. Oh my gosh, you don't have taxes for the past 2 years. Well, I'm sorry, you're not going to get funding, but let's get you set up. That's the stuff I was helping people with. That's not the stuff that lights my soul on fire, but helping people does. And so in the beginning, it was a need. And then I got just the tiniest taste of that. And then it turned into kind of like mentorship. Like I'll just kind of guide you. I launched a course. No one bought it because I didn't, again, talk about it. I didn't understand that. And the painful truth is you just have to show up as the thing you want to be. And so the more I consistently did that, put myself out there, got uncomfortable, stopped talking about hair because I was turning that faucet off and not wanting to grow that plant, not wanting that to grow. And I stepped into Kelsey Business Coach even before I had a single client. That's when things started to shift. And so that's a very long-winded answer of how I got into it. I do a lot of things and we can talk more about that, but I think it's important to be real, raw, and honest that it was not an easy transition for me, at least. I went from 6-figure bougie, beautiful schedule to back to my old habits, overworked, not making good money, hustling, desperate energy, like literally begging people to work with me and discounting myself until they would. And it was a grind. I mean, I didn't hit 6 figures in my coaching business until my solid full second year of business. So that's the truth.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you're being transparent because I think it is so much of anything I feel like in business is glamorized. And there are people who do show the behind the scenes. There are people that do show like the struggles that they go through, but Instagram is a highlight reel. I've talked about this before, and people aren't often sharing all the things that go into building the beautiful space or like having these 6-figure cash months and like all this crazy stuff. Like there's so much, and you know, that's great. And you know, they may have been able to get there within a year, but other people, it might take them 4 or 5 years. Or like I've talked to a lot of people recently who have said like, oh, I want what you have. And like they see what's on Instagram and it seems amazing and so fast. And, you know, so much of our industry it is instant gratification and people want that. And I'm like, hey, I'm on year 9 of business.
Yep.
It was not overnight.
Yep.
I guess not 9 of business, but 9 of being in the lash world as a whole. And so many people think everything should be overnight, and it's not. And it's cool because like, you know, these conferences that I like to go through in the lash world and stuff, people are real and people are honest and they're talking about all of these things, and it kind of brings you back to a level of being like, oh, okay. Because I think a lot of us see on social media and they see all of these people are doing all these things and they're further ahead than I am, and then getting in front of them in person and realizing like, oh, well, they might have this other thing, but I don't feel as bad about myself. And there's a quote from a book that I love, that says, I'm gonna completely butcher this, but it says something along the lines of, maybe our insecurities and our feelings of self-doubt come from us having too high of expectations for ourselves. And then, the flip side of that coin is we should have high expectations for ourselves, but we should also be realistic in our timeline, is the way that I look at it. And I think it's so cool that you're sharing with us, it wasn't overnight for you to get to those 6 figures. And I think, that being everybody's goal obviously is amazing and great. And I think with services, it's tough because you have a lot more overhead than if you're, coaching virtually, or if you're hosting, things like that. But can you tell us a little bit more about the CEO Society and what that looks like and how we can sign up if we're in,
Molly,
in
dropped
the area?
The ball. Okay, so
No, you're good.
Well, I just wanted to break that apart into chunks. And community happened after failure. So launching that course no one bought, launching an online community that was called, oh gosh, I don't even remember. It was like Business One. It was so tacky. It was like Business 101. I had my CPA do a workshop. Like, bleh, so boring. Sorry, Chad, but you're not a social guy. He's not going to listen to this. But long story short, like I just threw everything at the wall. And I think why it took longer to grow and get to where I'm at is I wasn't niched down, and I refused because I did not want to only work with hairstylists. And I don't regret that decision because my niche now is 6 to 7 figure service-based entrepreneurs who have a team. And I love that niche because I get to be in all kinds of industries. But at that time, I was like, everyone needs me. Like, I need to be available for everybody. And that just, it took a while to build authority there. So I'm throwing stuff at Instagram. No one's biting. I have this really boring Facebook group I'm not even excited for. It's like throwing a party that you don't want to be at. And people are feeling that energy. And I had that old networking group I had started. And CEO Society is actually my second networking group. I have another one called Empower PNW. And this is like crazy. This is how this came to be. This is the real. I always had this idea of something called Boss Up in my head. And I envisioned just business owners coming together like you and I and just being like, let's talk shop. Like what's working, what's not working, what's frustrating you, like a safe place for us to grow together. And I just kept having this idea. And one of my clients was like, host it at my space. I won't charge you. And I was like, okay. So we just threw a date on the calendar. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Time goes by. This hasn't happened yet. I have 2 friends. One's in real estate, one's a loan officer. And they call me, Kelsey, we want to start a networking group and we need your help. And I'm like, that's weird because I'm doing this one event called Boss Up and maybe this could be a thing. And that's how we started Empower PNW. It's based down in the Puyallup, Washington area if you're local. And it's all business owners. And it's truly just a place to come together, connect. And every month we have a different focus on what we're talking about, all to help you lead better. That's the entire intention behind it. So that was the first group. And then I actually don't live in Puyallup. So I recently had done like an audit and was like, wow, all of my top clients, my coaching clients come from my groups because I'm part of that group. I'm part of an online community that a friend of mine runs. And being a Coug, there's a Cougar community that I'm a part of as well. And all of them funnel into my business because people get to know, like, and trust me in person. And that ramp is a lot shorter than if I'm connecting with someone brand new on Instagram. And so it's literally just an efficiency question. I'm like, oh, so if I just put more people into these groups and keep supporting them, naturally, I'll get more clients. Why wouldn't I do that? And I get paid along the way for sure. So literally, I met Molly at a Seattle networking group. My mindset at that time was like, okay, I need to get more connected where I live. So that's how I met Molly. And this story is wild. I don't know if you know it, Mackenzie, but literally we grabbed coffee. And for those that don't know, Molly's a special human, but I was drawn to her energy. And I'm just like, I'm a hot mess. Here's my brain. Here's like all the things I'm doing and thinking of. All I know is I need to start a group up here and I don't want to do it alone. Literally days after the group Molly and I met at, the founder of that group approached Molly and I and was like, hey, I'm moving. Will you guys take this over? And that is how we started CEO Society. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I've been seeing the dates that you guys have gone, and every single time I'm either out of town or like I have clients booked, and I'm like, I need to go to one of these events.
Third Friday of the month every month.
Okay.
Just block it out. Yeah. Just put a reoccurring, and then once that spot's open, bam, you're there. But that's how that came to be.
I need to go.
Yes.
That is so cool.
There is power in community, and I think part of it is like in a post-COVID world, people were hungry for it. They wanted that in-person connection. I think that's something special we hit on. I have a BA in entrepreneurship. I built a salon. I know what it takes to build a business, and I have the degree to back it up. And they, for a very fair amount of money, not expensive at all, get 2 hours of training and the ability to connect with other people. And then literally both groups are ran the same way, just the target market and the messaging is a little bit different. But you could go, because they happen the same week every month, you could go to both of them and get something completely out of it, but on the back end, they look the same, which is crazy.
That is so cool. So the way that it's set up, now I'm like curious because I'm like, do I need to make one of these for lash artists
Probably.
in my area?
Yeah.
I'm like, this would be so cool because I know like
Yes.
there's so many lash artists in this area and there's so many people that want to be connected and that's hard too because I'm sure some people are nervous to like show up alone or do something, but like realizing like, oh, these people aren't scary. So
Yeah.
talking about like the topics that you bring up, do you have like specific things that you talk about each month, or do you get feedback from the people in the group to be like, oh, this is what we need to be focusing on, or this is something that's, you know, a struggle in their business that they want to, you know, get help on?
A lot of it is impacted by the clients I work with. So from a coaching perspective, I have one-on-one clients, and I actually do run a mastermind in person, which we can talk about too, because maybe I might want to be launching one up here, and I feel like you should be a part of it. But that being said, I just listen. What questions do I get asked all the time? What are my clients kind of struggling through? And I also kind of have to coach to the middle because there's people in the room who are solopreneur. They're still working full time in their 9 to 5. It's like a side hustle all the way up to multi-7-figure CEOs. So I have to, me as a coach, provide content that supports all of that. And that's why we do a lot of stuff that's hands-on and different. So Sunday specifically, like in a couple days from us recording this, we have a social media workshop. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to break up into small teams and do an audit. So I'm going to look at your profile, and based off what I see, I'm going to write down who I think your target market is. And then vice versa. And then not like in like a I know better than you kind of way, but like a genuine, like, here's how I'm receiving this. Is this close to what you're hoping for or not? And then like actually come together and workshop. How do we adjust that to really hit home to the people you're targeting? And that's where I love to take topics. At the end of the day, everyone's like, we didn't figure out social media. And oftentimes the question's much deeper than that. They don't know who they're speaking to, and they don't know what they're saying. It's probably those two things. And they don't have a strategy to do it, so they don't do it. But I like to really change people's relationship with the question so that way they actually get to where they need to go. So short answer to that is I pay attention to what common themes exist. And then also when we have the meetings themselves, I pay attention to how it's being received in the room. We just did one called CEO speed dating, and we did it last year for Empower. We did it again this last week because everyone loved it. It was like little 5-minute segments, and you get to know everyone in the room on a deeper level. So we just pay attention to what people are asking for. Yeah.
That is so cool. CEO speed dating. I think that is so fun. And I feel like that probably helps people narrow down like their elevator pitch too, and
Yes.
like get more confident in what they're saying. And
Yes.
to follow up on what you're talking about with social media, I feel like exactly like you said, people often don't know who they're speaking to. And that's where they get, you know, frustrated with their content strategy and what's going on. And the more they look inward, and I think for me at least, I was like, I need to figure out who I am so I know who I can effectively market to.
Yeah.
And I want to bring it back to something you said way earlier in the episode, talking about socially selling, because that was something that I struggled with in the beginning too, because I was like, I would post about something one time and I'd be like, nobody bought it. Nobody wants to learn from me,
Yeah.
or nobody wants to do this. And the more I realized, people need to see more information. There's tons of different types of buyers. Some want information. Some want that emotional tie. Some want like, you know, what's in my kit. They want to see what's going on. And obviously I could go into that forever and ever and ever. But what's your take on social selling now after you had that like course sale that, you know, nobody signed up, and, you know, what's your strategy now as far as selling on social?
you have to know why you're doing it in the first place. I always come back to the why, and back to your point, like if you don't know who you are, how the heck can you expect your audience to know who you are? Like, it's just not going to work. So A, that awareness, and B, just, it's going to take time. And there's no one thing I say a lot. A friend of mine, she's like, I was listening to your podcast and you said this and now I want it on a t-shirt, which is this. I say there's no shortcut for the show up. Like at a certain point, you have to just put your face out there. Like there, you can automate it. You can make all the cute canvas. You can have your VA do it for you, your social media manager do it for you. But at a certain point, it's got to be you. Unless you're a ginormous corporation, with which most of us aren't. So what works for them is different than what would work for us. And I think that it takes time. The analogy I love to use for my clients who are launching new things, whether that's podcasts, new services, new businesses, is simply it's like you're throwing the biggest party of your life. Like imagine throwing a giant party, making sure all the decorations are cute, making sure all the food is like on point, drinks are perfection, and not telling a single soul, and then being upset when no one comes to your party. Like that's our expectation with social media. And so if you break it down to, it can really be that simple. Who are you inviting? Who is going to vibe well with the other people that you're inviting in the room? When is it? Why are you having the party in the first place? And the more you can communicate that and say it over and over again, the more success that you'll have. So I would say, yeah, having a solid strategy, know why you're doing it in the first place, and then just doing it. That's really what it comes down to. And those are things I did not understand. And that's why I share my failure, because so many people, I feel like I'm still figuring my life out, but I have strangers come up to me now who are like, oh my gosh, I follow you on social media. I love what you're doing. And that is wild to me. I don't think I'll ever get used to that. Like that is wild to me that that's happening. And that means I've figured out some things, but I don't want people to ever forget where I came from, because I think it's important to be honest about that too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think to follow up your point, when people recognize you out in the real world, one thing that I've heard from people at conferences, they say to me, you're the exact same as you are on your social media.
Yeah.
Like you're exactly bubbly, smiley, exactly what I was expecting. And it's happened to me before where I have run into people that I've followed on social media. I have admired them. They've been an inspiration to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, hi, like you're so-and-so. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, whoa, I was not expecting that. Like, I was like, I wasn't trying to like take up your time or like sit here and try and ask you 100 questions. Like, I literally just wanted to say hi. And like, that's another thing too, like realizing you have no idea who knows you out in the real world or who follows you on social media and has a certain, you know, they think of you with a certain reputation. And obviously if you're a dick, be a dick on social media and like in person in that way. Like if you're like snappy or saucy or spicy or whatever, like be who you are, because you're going to attract the right people to you. Yeah. And like it is, I feel the same way. It is like, I still will never get used to getting recognized. And my sister even said, so my sister has become quite popular on my Instagram page. And her and my mom were in a beauty supply store getting stuff, because my sister is actually a cosmetologist now. And someone said, your lashes look really pretty. And she was like, oh, thank you. And she goes, okay, this is going to be the weirdest question ever, but are you Lulu? And she was like, yes. And she goes, I follow your sister. Your sister's MacK, right? And she goes, yes. And so I remember she called me afterwards and she was like, Kenzie, I just got recognized for being on your social media. Yeah. And it's so funny because it's like, you never know who's watching. Be a good human, be genuine. And again, you're going to attract the right people being who you are.
Yeah. And on the flip, like I am not in this for a popularity contest. I could give two shits how many people follow me. What I know is successful and works is when people come to Empower or CEO Society or they hire me as a coach. Like that's all I care about. And I think your mindset has to change. If you're really going to do this thing and treat what you're doing like a legitimate business, then your relationship has to change on social media, because so many people start getting in this comparison game. They start obsessing over the metrics, what's performing, what's not performing. And unless you're truly a content creator and that is what you're doing, that is very different than having a service that you want people to buy from you. So I think that I think that's something people don't really talk about as well. I pay attention to me, I care more like who's commenting, what are they saying? Is that kind of my ideal person? When I write something and I'm getting like the preach hands, like, yes, this, like that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to pay attention to that and I'm going to keep delivering stuff like that. But I don't care how many views I get on a reel yeah, I don't, at least for this stage of business that I'm in. So yeah.
Well, and I think it's so important to look at that because the vanity metrics are so important to some people, and obviously it's super cool to see like your follower count go up or something go viral, and it's really awesome to see that your content is relatable to someone else, or it is sharing value that they want to hear. But like on the flip side of things, I will be the first one to say my posts that perform horribly bring me sales. Those are the things that like are landing with the right people who are ready to buy. Obviously, the reels that we make that are relatable and fun and funny are a great way to make, those connections to broaden your community. And that was originally my goal. Is I said, I want a bigger community. And I was like, and at that point, I wasn't sharing my face at all. So then I started showing up and building those connections with people. And I think that is what helped lead me to that, bigger following that everybody wants. And it's stressful. So be careful what you wish for, because there was a point where I was waking up to 40 to 100 message requests every morning. And I would take the time to respond to every single one of them. And I was like, how did this happen? I was like, I just wanted to share a funny reel. Like, how did we get here? And, it's awesome to build that community. But exactly like you said, you should be looking for those praise hands. You should be looking for those people who are engaging on your comments or, in your comments. And those are the people that like, I try to take time. If I notice that they're consistently commenting on my things, I try to take the time to go on their page, comment on there, or send them a message and be like, hey, I really appreciate your engagement. And I think the more you can nurture those relationships, the easier it's going to be for you to build your business and scale your business, because your community is going to help push you to other people as well. The moment you get those reviews from people, past people that you've worked with, it helps so much to have that. And then just to have people have your back.
Yes.
I think it's so important.
Yeah. I was unaware that one of my superpowers is connecting people. Like strategically, I love to do it. And that's where the groups helped build a place to do that. And I also am not afraid to put myself out there. I mean, we met because I don't know how we got connected. I feel like you followed me and I immediately was like, okay, this girl's cool. Like, or I don't even know. I have no idea. Instagram somehow nudged us to connect, but I immediately liked what you were doing. And at the time, I didn't know how much overlap we had. So I just started to hit you up over and over and over. And like, I'm getting on your radar. Like, I am going to get on your podcast. And the funny thing is, Mackenzie already came on my podcast. And now we have like 17 mutual friends, which is even fun. Just as more time goes by, of course. But all that to say, if you're following someone on social media and that you think they're doing cool stuff and you look up to them, or you just think there could be a place of collaboration, like, how gross would it have been, Mackenzie, if the first time I DM'd you was like, hey, I want to be on your show? You would be like, who is this girl? Like, build that relationship, water that plant, get to know that person. Also, fun fact, people, if you follow a new account and they're over, I would say 1,000 people plus, and you follow them, they are not waking up every morning looking through all the new people who followed them. They're immediately aware of you. Like, they're not aware of you. If you want to be seen, it takes a lot more than just that, just so you know. I think people forget that, and then they get bitter like, oh, well, I followed you. I'm like, no clue. Completely unaware. Completely unaware. Unless you hit me up multiple times. Like, I don't know. No offense. I don't mean it negatively, totally. But I don't know who you are. I'm not like sitting on Instagram every day, all day.
And I think too, like, us being as busy as we are, obviously we're still posting our content. We're doing as much as we can to connect with our current audience. But you're exactly right. Like, we don't see the people follow us come through. And when people get discouraged, like, oh, well, they didn't follow me back, or they didn't like any of my things. Like, there have been certain times where I will like meet someone at a conference and I'll be like, hey, send me a message so I can follow you. And same. I'll go immediately to go find that. Or I'm like, hey, let me type your thing in right now so I can see you. And there's like all these message requests from them previously. So sometimes we don't even see the message requests. Yeah. And it's tough. But one thing that really stood out to me after this last conference that I was just at in Austin this weekend, people were tagging me on their stories, and it was so fun to connect with everyone. But there were, I think, 3 people who reached out afterwards and said, hey, like, I really loved your speech. I loved talking to you. Or maybe I was too nervous to come see you, but I really loved the info you had to share. And like that speaks volumes. And those people, I'm immediately like, follow, I love you, you're the best. And it's like, sometimes you do have to not be afraid to put yourself out there multiple times to make a connection. And just know that, hey, it's gonna happen, but they may not see that first message, or they may not see that you followed them. And if it is someone that you want to connect with, continue to pursue that, and don't be afraid to send that extra message or comment on their things.
Absolutely. And I'm glad we talked about this, because I think my point earlier about your relationship with social media has to shift as your as you go from consumer to business owner. As you scale, that change is even more drastic, because it has to be. It's a pure time thing. Like, your time is limited. And also, I don't know about you, but like, if Instagram went away tomorrow, I'd be fine. And I know, actually, I've listened to some of your podcast episodes of past guests that like, they say all their business comes from Instagram, and I get that, but like, I want control over my business. I don't want to be in that position where all my eggs are in one basket. And if that plug, does everyone remember the day Instagram shut down for a whole day and there were people who were losing their minds? I went on business as usual. Like, I was like, oh, I guess I'll just have to shift my marketing energy a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think that's where the difference between relying solely on one platform and having figured out that platform versus like, you've figured out business and you know how to run business. Had to go there. Yeah.
Totally. So what are so if I was on Instagram alone and I had, the business that I'm running now, what would you recommend me to have as well in the case that Instagram shut down?
Come to CEO Society. Like, that's why, like, find in-person community, because no tech is going to pull that away. And I just put more and more emphasis on strategically networking. I go to a lot of networking, but I'm very intentional on what it is and my mind. Why am I going to this thing? Who's going to be in the room? And what's my end goal? And how am I going to present myself? Because when I was in Pullman and I'm talking to the College of Business students, the way I'm going to talk and speak to those 20-somethings is going to be vastly different than when I was at the banquet for the networking group, which is a lot of older alumni and athletes. Like, same Kelsey, but I'm showing up in different ways because I want to be memorable for the right reasons. And so I think there's a lot of value in in-person connection. Even if your business is digital, at least start to foster those relationships just in the off chance something happens. And I also think another side of that is email. Like, I know it's really boring and Molly's going to be like clapping and be very proud of us right now, but I think email is important. Even if I have people do this. Even if someone literally is deleting it every time it comes in, they're still seeing your name pop up. When I had my salon, anytime I would send out a newsletter, I would always get minimum 3 appointments from that one email. Even if people didn't click directly on the link, the timing, you can tell. The email would go out later that day, ding, 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 3 different appointments, because it just serves as a reminder. So I would just diversify online, get people over to email, and then I would also look into local groups that you can connect with that even if your target market isn't in the room, if they understand what you do, they can refer you business. And that's definitely worth your time. And people just neglect that.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Oh my gosh. I feel like there was so much value in this episode. I'm so excited for people to listen to this. Is there any like closing remarks you have for anyone, or any like words of encouragement, or any little piece of information that you feel like, oh, this changed my thought process and helped me in my business?
Yeah, I would say be patient, but be persistent. And I think those are the 2 things that are make or break for people like us who are like in it for the long haul. Being patient, continuing to show up, doing the things, and being consistent in doing them. Because if you're patient but you're not taking action, it's not just going to happen to you unless you win the lotto. But even then, you had to go buy the ticket, right? So I think so many people they get impatient too quick, or they lose that consistency. They get to a certain win, whether it's that 6-figure mark or a certain dollar amount they wanted in a month, or a certain number of followers, and then they just stop with that consistency. I think those 2 things are like the quickest way to a business death. So do those two things. And that's also why, I rebranded my podcast recently, which everyone should go listen to that episode. It's called the Get Shit Done podcast, and Mackenzie was on it. It was amazing. I was like, we need to have a part 2 already. But I recently changed all my branding because when I thought about what do I do, how do I help people, it's taking action and just coming alongside them with that, helping them get in the right mindset, helping them have the systems, and then doing the damn thing. Like at a certain point, you just have to do it. And so my advice would be go do the thing.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm so excited for everyone to listen to this one. Can you tell us where we can find you on social media? If you have, where we can find CEO Society, all the things that's going on in your world right now.
Yeah, lots of places. The main one, please go listen to the podcast. And if you just search our names, it should pop up because, fun fact, podcast works like Google, so it's searchable. But it's called the Get Shit Done podcast, and that's been super fun. We changed the format and the branding recently, so it's been a lot more tactical and bite-sized pieces of content, which I'm really excited about. So definitely go follow that. And if you're local to the area, check out our groups. We have CEO Society Seattle, if you search on Instagram, or .com is our website. And we also have Empower PNW, and that meets more in the Puyallup South End area. And like I said, we have members that actually come to both. The fun thing is I made them to make it easier for people. I'm like, so you don't have to drive as far. We have people coming from Olympia who drive all the way up to, we actually meet in Redmond. So we have people who drive all the way up from Olympia. And I'm like, that's what I have Empower, but they get value out of it because it's different energy, different people, different vibes. So definitely if you're local, check them out. But if you're not local, I have an online group called the Get Shit Done Club, where it's pretty self-explanatory. We just get shit done. I do live coaching every Wednesday morning right before recording this. I did a whole training on team members, getting the right people in the right seats on the bus. And yeah, so I'm all about community and connection. And from there, if I'm a fit and I can help you go from multi-6 to 7, then let's go. Let's do it.
That is so cool. Oh my gosh. And we'll have all this linked in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, Kelsey, for coming on. I'm super excited for whenever we chat next. I'm sure there's going to be a part 2. And I hope, you all listeners loved this. Take a screenshot, share it with us, tag us on your stories, and we will see you guys in the next episode.